Thank you, Matt. Good evening, residents of Brentwood and community members. Tonight is the Mayor and Town Council of Brentwood work session dated Tuesday, July 5th, 2022. We're beginning this meeting at 7:11. The meeting is being held in person, and residents can view this meeting via Comcast Channel 71, Verizon Channel 36, and YouTube Live at tinyurl.com/BrentwoodMD. For public comments during the meeting, please email info@brentwoodmd.gov. And with that, I will ask our town clerk to begin with a roll call.
Councilmember Vestrigoff.
Present.
Councilmember Monroe.
Present.
Councilmember Taylor.
Present.
Vice Mayor Leggett.
Present.
Town Administrator Gaston.
Present.
I believe the mayor is excused, the treasurer is excused, and the police chief is excused, and I'm Giselle Richards, town clerk, present. I'm sorry, and the attorney.
Present.
Attorney Deloach.
This is what happens when you have a summer session. It's like council light. Before we get into our agenda items, may I please have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I move to approve the agenda of the work session of the Mayor and Council for today, Tuesday, July 5th, 2022.
Any additions or deletions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Fantastic. Agenda item number 1 is public comments.
Mr. Gaston.
Don't you want to do the CDC thing, or is that not on here?
That's
That was
on
the
the-
first item.
Gateway.
Public comments, and then
Okay.
number 2 is Gateway.
Gotcha. Okay.
Ms. Richards, do we have any comments?
I do not see any public comments at this time.
All right, very, very good. Come on in. So before we go to agenda item number 2, we will open up the floor to any general public comments. If you're joining us tonight and you'd like to contribute to the meeting, you have 5 minutes to speak. We'll allow for 3 minutes for question and answer thereafter, and I just kindly ask that the council reserves discussion of such items beyond the Q&A for the next meeting. Does that make sense?
Sounds good.
So our 2 members, would you like to offer any public comments? Okay. We will offer up the opportunity to comment again at the end of the meeting, which will probably be in about an hour to an hour and a half. Okay. Very good. So we'll move on then to agenda item number 2, which I think is Councilmember Marcus Monroe, Gateway CDC and Studio Lab presentation.
Sure. So we've asked for Gateway CDC board member Tony Lee, and then our executive director, Pat Thornton, to come back to give a follow-up presentation. Previously, the council received a rundown of the initiative for Studio Lab, also talking a lot about the new initiative and how it's poised to sort of put a pathway for artists to build equity in the community and ownership in their properties. And the council asked several questions and asked for them to return today to present more information and more details on what that initiative and how it would look like, as well as an update on the requested amount for the American Rescue Plan funds. With that, I'll turn it over to Tony and Pat to provide more insight.
There we go.
Alrighty. Okay. Good evening, and
Good evening.
okay.
He's going to share the screen where it has your presentation.
Gotcha. Kiss me. Okay. Well, thank you, Councilmember Monroe, for the kind shall I say, introduction. It's a pleasure to be back to present to you all again, to council members and to the community at large. My name is Pat Thornton. I am the Executive Director of Gateway CDC. And as you already know, I'll be very brief on the preliminaries. Gateway CDC is the community development corporation that is charged with helping to revitalize the communities of Brentwood, North Brentwood, and Mount Rainier. As such, as a consequence of COVID-19 and the ramifications of COVID-19, we've had to kind of stretch our capabilities and our services. As you know, we actually managed the $50,000 grant that Brentwood distributed to the community, and we were pleased to do that. But in addition, what we found is that a number of individuals were displaced because of COVID, as you were well aware, and our artists and our general business community found itself oftentimes in a position where they were displaced. We had a situation over at Wyndham, and individuals were being displaced because new owners come in and they wanted to raise the rents, sometimes at a rate of 200% more than what people were paying. I brought in people, Gateway brought in people from cooperative initiatives to help counsel the residents and the artists, and then also to give a presentation to the community at large. So we're finding that people, either because they were displaced because of COVID or aging out, we have a very large baby boomer population. They're having to reshape, pivot, and find other ways to make a living. And our Media Arts Lab has been very, very busy. Michelle Darden-Lee has expanded the services at the Media Arts Lab to accommodate these recent demands. You know what happens oftentimes? The artists shape the community, and then the developers come in after it's been shaped, and they get displaced. It's a different type of gentrification, but we are experiencing it right now. I can't tell you how many requests that I receive from developers to place themselves in this area. And so we're hoping to help artists and business leaders and community residents to build their capacity to come to own their properties, come to start their businesses, and to make sure they have the back end. I mentioned when I was here before that we have a partnership with WALA, Washington Area Lawyers for the Arts. We've been given sessions in accounting, in grant writing, in back office skills, and other capacity building skills. But what's been happening recently is through a new initiative that Tony will tell you about, we've been having a hands-on approach with individuals trying to come to own their properties, and we're finding that the skills that are required and the capacity that is required actually applies to the whole business community, because your accounting skills, your ability to manage your office, your ability to do assessments, your ability to do break-even analysis, all of those things are the tenets of good business. And so we're having to expand our capacity, but there are very few of us. And so we're appealing not only to Brentwood, but to North Brentwood and to Mount Rainier, so that we can help bring this community out of this time in a way where they can appreciate the advances and not be displaced. So with that being said, that's much of what Gateway CDC is about. I must mention, I didn't mention before, we have not forced anyone to leave during this time. We've been very understanding with all of our residents. We've had some serious issues as it relates to HVAC and other issues that are now $100,000. We still haven't transferred that to our residents, but we stand here because we want to make sure that this population of business people not only doesn't get lost, but is able to prosper and be the new owners in the next generation. With that, I'll turn it over to Anthony Lee, who is the president of our board, who will tell you much about Studio, the group that we've brought together to address the concern of moving people from renting to ownership. Mr. Lee?
Thank you very much, Pat. Good evening, Town Council. Good evening, residents of Brentwood. I know you've got a lot on your schedule, but just real quickly, I want to go through what is Studio Lab. Studio Lab is a mentorship and training initiative of the Gateway Media Arts Lab to complement the current capacity of Gateway CDC in facilitating artist and small business ownership of properties in the Gateway Arts District and surrounding area. Our project's vision includes the ability to enable artists to control their spaces so they don't have to move when the building gets sold out from under them or a new landlord comes in and wants to raise rents a significant amount. Support stable practices, business practices, making sure that they have the support from the community and from our organization to help them succeed. Create more financial stability, build artist and small business equity, maintain and grow the population of world-class artists that we already have in this community. What we need to succeed, we need your financial support. And that's number one. Opportunities for collaboration among the municipalities, between the municipalities and Gateway CDC, technical support, professional in-kind services, real estate professionals, economic development professionals, legal professionals. And our next, we're going to be getting into the financial breakdown, and I want to bring Pat back in because I think she does a better job of going through the numbers, but this is where we'll get into the specifics of our ask and what it's going to take to make this project successful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lee. Of course, as Executive Director, money is my middle name, but our ask is $265,000 across 3 towns. We understand that there are different levels of capacity in the 3 towns. This is being broken down by population. So what we did was distribute the cost amongst the 3 municipalities equal to the populations. And as I mentioned before, there are staff expenses. And one of the things that we found to be very successful is our one-on-one counseling and our mentorship. Many of our artists who have been at the Media Arts Lab have gone on to the Phillips Collection, have had several exhibits, have actually are in the production of a movie. If you've heard of Double Cross, that was incubated right out of the Media Arts Lab. And now, for the first production, because we didn't have capacity in Prince George's County, the whole crew was actually flown to Atlanta, and now they have movie credits. And more than 50% of that crew happened to be from Prince George's County and from our area, some of which even were from this particular area. They weren't all from Mount Rainier. Media Arts Lab is just located there. So planning and strategy meetings. We have to partner, of course, with Redevelopment Authority and other county and city officials, and we're trying to expand our capacity throughout. And we're trying to get all resources. We're not just trying to come to the same people. Site visits to property, concierge meetings, strategy meetings. We mentioned on the back our team, and our team includes Michelle Darden-Lee, who actually manages and directs the Gateway Media Arts Lab, Marcus Monroe, your council member, Tracy Hayden-Lowe. And Tracy is with the policy program from the Brookings Institute, and she's brought us a lot of research. We're doing these things from numbers. We're not just flying from the hip. Margaret Boozer, who you know, is head of Red Dirt Studio, but also she's bringing the community voice. She goes back to the community. She's not just speaking for Margaret Boozer or for Red Dirt Studio. Pierre Walcott, who's with Creative Edge, and he's been a consultant forever, and he helps in any way possible. You've met Mr. Lee and Dr. Tanya Harrison, who's your former vice mayor. So we have the capacity to do what we need to do. We need subsidies, and we also found that because we're virtual, there's one good consequence of COVID, and that's the ability to train virtually. We increased our capacity and our attendance for training by about 300% with WALA the last time we did it. And what we hope to do is to expand that and get more promotions for it so that we can help build capacity and then pair people up with counselors so that we can walk them through the process. That is pretty, and we talked about, and your mayor asked me about before, the sociocracy and the co-op training. We have actually gotten someone from Dawn, that's Democracy at Work, Institute Network, and that is a co-op organization. And he is a professional trainer. He's the person who met with the folks from Brentwood, and he's built up a training program to help people understand about cooperatives, the cooperative values, and about how to cooperate to not only purchase things, but to also form cooperatives to collaboratively move forward. So we'll be doing that. And of course, we have meeting and signage. So those are some of the things that we hope to accomplish. And from a financial perspective, we were asking for $100,000 for the town of Brentwood. Did I miss anything, Tony? Come
No,
on, I know you want to add.
not unless,
I know I might have missed something.
well, just in terms of just the ask, I think for staff expenses, we were looking at 90,000 for that segment. Business support subsidies, 155,000. And then for the marketing gateway, built branding and signage study, $20,000.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any questions?
I do. Thank you again for coming, by the way. This is great.
Oh,
You guys
okay.
came back twice. Really appreciate it. And what an all-star cast you have. But let's talk money. So when I look at these numbers, I have 3 questions. The first is, do you have any projections for how long the money will last? Meaning these salary expenses, will that be out for 2 years, 3 years? Same with the subsidies. Do you have, and I know that's a guess, but do you have any sort of expectation for how long that will last? That's question number 1. 2, what sort of grants are you guys pursuing in this effort? And then 3, is there other cities where there's a similar sort of program that I could look at to sort of help me a little bit understand sort of how it works and what your goals are?
Okay.
Real quickly, we've been studying, I think it's the city of San Francisco, correct?
Yes.
There's a co-op in San Francisco that is working for artists, studio, housing, and rental spaces, or actually ownership, I'm sorry, of spaces. They're actually a good resource, and we could get you that link and that information.
We'll get you the exact link.
I would love that.
Absolutely.
That'd be great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as it relates to funding, we know that this is going to be a one-time ask. We know that we can't come back to this well. This is very specific monies that we don't believe is going to be happening again in the future. So we are we are strategizing and working diligently to, in fact, you've already applied for funding. I'll let you talk about that. But we are looking for other funders to help move this forward in the future. We are looking at a fiscal year calendar for this amount of money.
Okay.
We want this resource to grow, and we want to not only invest in it and to make it go farther, but we also want to look for other partners moving forward, including corporations, to help fund this effort.
I can tag on to what Tony said. Actually, having been a grant analyst at AARP for 10 years, I know you wanted to know about sustainability. You're going to give us this money, and then next year we're going to be flopped, and we won't be able to continue the program. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. So, yes, Tony's already clarified that we understand that these funds are only available temporarily, but the structure of the program, and that's why I felt it was important to clarify that this is an expansion of what we're already doing. So with this expansion, it will help us to garner more funds. It will also help us to allow us to help more people, but we're not new at this. We have, Gateway's been in existence for 23 years right now. We've been doing this Media Arts Lab for over 10 years. And this expansion of this tier level, it's a tier level program. People come in and they have to pass and do certain things before they can get counseling. And when they get counseling, they have to build their capacity, build their money and everything like that. So in answer to your question, I've applied for DHCD grants, Department of Housing and Community Development operating funds. I've applied for the County Council discretionary funds. I've applied for anything I can think of, but I've also applied for the other municipalities, and I'm about to do the strategic initiative fund that'll be due in July, a little later this month, but that's for our construction. But for operating and for expenses that are related to what we're mentioning here. I've applied at least 3 places and hope to have more operating funds from that. And what I was hoping to do with DHCD, because we're now solid, our finances are solid, I'm doing compilations every year with our accounting service to make sure we can certify that our accounting practices are in order. And that opens us up to being eligible for more grants. So right now, we're all solid, and we hope that when we start these operating grants with DHCD, that will be what will continue our sustainability, which was your question.
That's
I hope
great.
it wasn't too long.
No, this is great. So this is your launch. I mean, not your launch, but this is like your springboard to
Yeah.
sustainability, let's say.
To an expanded capacity,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions?
No, I do have a question.
Yeah.
If we wanted, would we be able to take a tour of the labs to just sort of,
Absolutely.
and we can contact you to do that, Ms. Thornton?
Oh, please, certainly. And Michelle Lee. And you can contact me and I'll put you in touch with Michelle Lee.
Okay.
We
Um,
actually love the public coming in because there are a lot of artists that are doing a lot of great things and they love people coming around visit. So anytime,
Okay,
we'd love to have you.
Absolutely.
thank
please.
you.
That'd be great. Anything else? Any other questions?
Well, no question, but again, thank you both for coming in. There's been a lot of, I know, behind the scenes work over the last year and change, so I really do appreciate you both just committing so much time and effort to all of this. So I believe, just to kind of clarify, you did the presentation to Mount Rainier
Correct.
last week. I may have my weeks off, or 2 weeks ago.
That's
What
2
is it?
weeks.
2 weeks.
I believe, yes.
And so this meeting, and then the next meeting is going to be to North Brentwood when they're back from recess.
Yes.
Okay. And then do you have maybe a question for both sides of the table here? Because I know we have our retreat on Saturday. Do we have an ask of them or a sense of when we may need to ask, additional information, or do we feel like this is enough information to at least take and talk more about internally? It's sort of my blanket kind of question comment to everybody here. And do you need anything from us, Gateway CDC, as far as timeline or follow-up? Because right now, the clock is ticking, so I just want to make sure we're all clear on the next steps. Outside of North Brentwood's presentation, I believe in August.
Nothing that we can think of off the top, except any support that you can provide us, we greatly appreciate it.
Okay.
But there's no deadline for where you need a dedicated funding response or
Not to
something
defer
like that.
What do you say?
Any deadlines that we need to hit in terms of funding moving forward.
When do you turn into a pumpkin is what I want to know.
No. Our HVAC system is about to turn into a pumpkin, but it's no immediate deadline because we're, the initial we're able to do. But no, there's no immediate deadline. I thank you for asking.
Attorney Deloach?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify one thing. The ask that you guys have here, if North Brentwood comes back and says no, or Mount Rainier comes back and says no, will that change what you're asking for Brentwood?
No. It's based on population. One of the things that Mayor Isidro Tremino Lopez says is that, in terms of our constituency, how do we justify, that ask? And so we based it on population because of the apportionment of what it was that we were needing to serve the whole area. We thought that was the fairest way. So we appreciate that. I know we should say yes, but I'm just being honest.
It's a general ask, and so whatever you can provide, and whatever all the other municipalities provide.
Of course, if you wanted to give more review, but I was given the justification to say that we were trying to respond to her request to say that we have a legitimate reason for asking for it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Our pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
And
We will discuss it further at the town retreat.
I look forward to
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
And I look forward to.
That was great. Moving on to our next agenda item, I think we will ping pong back, myself and Councilmember Monroe, as well as Councilmember Taylor. We're going to discuss our visits to neighboring elementary schools. And Mr. Gaston, if you wouldn't mind, bringing up the slide, or the picture, shall I say, that says Thomas Stone Elementary outdoor classroom options.
There's options 2, 3, okay, got it.
Yeah, it's the TSE.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So,
This is now on the screen, and if Mr. Carl would
All right.
be so kind to share.
so for those folks working at home, well, maybe you're working or watching at home, to review, Thomas Stone Elementary as well as Mount Rainier Elementary requested some contributions to be pulled from our ARPA funds to support different initiatives and things like that. And we've sort of, in a roundabout fashion, come to the idea of supporting their requests for outdoor classrooms. And so Councilmember Taylor and myself visited Thomas Stone Elementary about 10 days ago. We were toured around by the principal as well as the president of the PTO. And I have sort of some reflections on our visit, but if you don't mind, is there any reflections that you have that you'd like to share with council about the visit to Thomas Stone?
So I was actually very surprised. I did not know that Thomas Stone has so much sort of area around the school. I really applaud that they would like to sort of maximize that space. A few of the things that we discussed was an outdoor garden, possible performance area. That wouldn't necessarily be a part of this, but one of the things that they would like to include in the school, a butterfly garden, and just some sort of general sprucing up that the school needs. They also were able to communicate that any outdoor learning spaces would be maximized, because as long as it's over a certain temperature, the kids can be outside. That was sort of my concern, that the kids wouldn't be able to use the space, but as long as the weather is not bad and it's over, I think he said 32, the kids can use the outdoor learning area. The teachers enjoy having the children out there. The children enjoy being out there. We had discussed in a previous meeting sort of a breakdown of how we would like to spread the money. I feel comfortable with that. One of the things that, it wasn't a concern, but we'll need to figure out is how we can easiest get the money to them for their use, because over a certain threshold, they're not allowed to manage themselves as the school. And so we would need to talk about that, but I think that it was a really good tour.
I was really excited to see that there was so much possibility for outdoor learning space. I mean, I know your kids go there, so you know the school fairly well, Councilmember Monroe, but it was my first time visiting, honestly. What we had originally up there on the screen was one of two sort of spots that are primed for outdoor classroom space. The first spot faces 34th Street. It's already fenced in. It has an outdoor element, which is just like a little slide and so forth. And there's doors from the school that open up there, so you can just let the kids out and learn. So that area is kind of primed for it. The second spot is behind the school, and there is a sort of a circular seating area where there's a big umbrella, and that circular seating area, again, is primed for outdoor learning. To Councilmember Taylor's point, the question is sort of in what form do we contribute, right? And what do they need? And what we found was that for Thomas Stone, they're still sort of in the planning stages, right? They're sort of brainstorming right now. They don't have any specific asks like, I would like this piece of playground equipment, or I imagine this being a blah, blah, blah kind of space. I think they were just excited for the opportunity. And so one thing that I was going to say to them at the meeting that I didn't, because I wanted to talk to you guys first, was I wanted to say to them, well, come back to us with some specific asks. Like, we want to turn this into a butterfly garden, or we want to add these outdoor elements for education. And that way we can consider essentially purchasing the items for them as opposed to gifting X amount of dollars. And in some ways,
which alleviates the need for them to have to do anything with the money.
from a reporting
Cuts the
standpoint,
middle
it's
part out
exactly.
altogether.
Exactly. And it gets them what they need faster too. I mean, the PTO, I mean, I assume they're all volunteer, right? They're not
Yeah.
getting paid for that. So, so in a sense, it would almost make their job easier. So those two spots seem to be the two spots that were most ready for outdoor learning. I think, you know, if we were to come out of this meeting and say, we want to move forward with our contribution for Thomas Stone, my ask to them would be, give me some specifics. Give me a wish list of what you want to do and how you want to use the space and certain elements that you want to include. So does that seem fair? And then, Mr. Gaston, if you don't mind going to the next item that says Mount Rainier outdoor options. I think it says 2 of 3. Mount Rainier Elementary presented us with 3, yep, that's the one, thank you, with 3 areas that are sort of primed for outdoor education. The first you'll see on the slide is already being used for outdoor education. There's some stumps, there's a lectern, and I think they're already using it for some outdoor education. It's also right outside the school, so it's easy to have the kids leave and disperse. And then the item underneath that, Mr. Gaston, is very nice. Is a second item that's actually in the back of the building, and what those are, they're like little cubbies, right? They're little cubicles almost. The advantage to these areas being used as outdoor space is that they are shaded, they are rainproof, and again, there are doors from each classroom that let out in each one of these little cubbies. And the cubbies already have some sort of infrastructure. Like all the cubbies have mulch, all the cubbies have some element. You can see like this one in the foreground, the element is some sort of like play car or something like that. So each cubby already has some sort of element in it. And when we were back there looking at that, and I think Councilmember Monroe can probably speak to this better than I, because him and I went to Mount Rainier Elementary together, we were asking if they could sort of come up with individual uses for each cubby and then a price, right? Was it like a price for each cubby almost?
Correct.
Does that sound?
Price per cubby, and then that way it could give us a better idea of how to, I don't know if justify is the right word, but it's easier to say to a resident, this is where the money went. And I think that was the point you were saying, right? Which is, we can show a clear photo of before and after for these cubbies versus other spaces where it may have not been as clear, but those cubbies were like the clearest example of where the money could go, and you can see the tangible, results from it right away if you spruce it up. And you had I think the clearest idea to me, at least in that area, of what they wanted to do.
There was one more space in the front, and that's where I'll ask Mr. Gaston to go to next, where it says Mount Rainier Elementary Outdoor Classroom option 3 of 3. And the space in the front, I believe they call like the sun garden or something like that. And this was, in essence, what I was hoping to honestly get from Thomas Stone, which was sort of a clear wish list. Because you'll see the top page is or the top photo is sort of how it is now. This is at the front of the school. And then the bottom photo is a photoshopped version of sort of what they'd like it to be.
True.
Remember that?
Yeah, that's right.
And for the council who received this email, at the bottom are links that were provided by Mount Rainier Elementary for specific outdoor elements.
Yep.
And in a sense, I think we could honestly go back to Thomas Stone and say, see what Mount Rainier did? Like, can you do this for us? And what we asked of Mount Rainier was to do that, but a little bit more for those cubbies in the back and that other outdoor space. But I think it's all very reasonable. Like those 3 links right there are to like a sunshade and some outdoor education items. And I don't think like the sunshade might be 5,000 and the outdoor education elements might be like 1,000, 1,000. So it's not gonna break the bank kind of stuff. But to Councilmember Monroe's point, I think if we can kind of focus on an area of the school and, he who has the gold makes the rules. So we can ask that, can you please use our gold in this one area to create this little space? That will sort of be but a more sort of tangible use as opposed to having it spread out over a dozen different small projects,
The scope a little bit.
which makes it easier to do.
Yeah.
And then was the blacktop a part of the ask, or was that just more FYI that they were thinking about doing something with?
So what I remember is they have like a huge like parking lot up top, and then they
Right.
have an auxiliary parking lot that's just sort of a level down, right?
Yep.
So they have two parking lots, and I think they thought about maybe changing some of that into outdoor classroom space. They also talked about changing some of it for water,
Right.
stormwater management, like maybe adding pavers or changing.
But that was going to be a bigger ask, and I think to his point, it was good to know, but it was something that I think would involve more of a county level decision being made when you start to get into stormwater.
Yeah. I mean, it's up there with like replacing the HVAC. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, how much impact can we really have? You know what I mean? And would that money get used in time that ARPA requires it to be used? Or is it going to be like held for a while?
Right.
You know? So I think these sort of like small goals for each school would be a great use of our money, to be honest
We
with you.
have immediate impact.
They have immediate impact, and it's easy to see.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
So, you know, if you guys think that that we're sort of going down the right street, I would say that you and I, Councilmember Taylor, go back to Thomas Stone and ask for some specifics. We go back to Mount Rainier Elementary, Councilmember Monroe, and ask for just a little bit more specifics, although they've gone a good way.
Yeah, I think because he didn't give us the equipment for the cubbies, right?
Correct.
It was,
The equipment requests were for that
Outdoor
space in the
space.
front, yeah.
and again, we need to stay within a certain threshold, because if you trigger it, he, you know, same as what Tom and Stoney indicated, that it's going to take longer once the county's process just takes longer. You have to go through the vendors, you have to go through
Right.
the procurement process. So I do agree. I think the more we can help more quickly, if we can do it through our town, I think that can get something to them by the fall versus
But that,
the county is, you know, a
that
year or
actually
two.
raises a really good question, which is, if we purchase the equipment, are we beholden to our purchase requisition policy?
I'm gonna look over at Jason.
Mr. Deloach,
That would be
if we purchase the equipment and the items for the schools, would we be required to use our purchase requisition policy? Or are we not, because it's a third-party purchase?
Donation,
A donation,
right?
yes.
If you are using town funds, then you need to follow our protocol.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we
It's
would-
not just because it's not being used by the town of Brentwood, town funds are being used.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So then to clarify this, if they're individual purchases under a certain amount, is it a fiscal year donation period that would trigger our procurement policy, right? Because if we paid $5,000 for one, just because it may not be available until, you know, in August, and then the next piece of equipment is due and available in November, but that's $5,000, so it's below our procurement policy. Is that still, if you understand what I mean, we just basically are making a series of purchases once they become available. Does that,
If you know what the end amount is going to be, you just don't know when
correct?
and how they're going to be sliced
'Cause
up.
we don't know when this stuff is going to be purchased and when right now at this point. It may not all happen at once.
But the provider that you're buying it from
Will be different
will be different.
for all the,
I think you should follow the procurement policy.
okay. So just get an idea of what that
Yep.
lump sum amount is going to be.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Which takes us back to the need for specific asks from both schools, is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah, because we'll possibly in accordance with the procurement policy, we may have to have multiple bids for those items. So if we know exactly what the items are, it sort of makes it easier to do that.
Sounds great.
Yeah?
So, Mr. Gaston, in this scenario where and I don't know how many pieces of vendors we'll be buying this from, but it's a lot of different items. Would you advise that be like one lump RFP that would go out, for example, to say, hey, we just need somebody that can provide us with all the equipment, or you have to just go out through?
In my estimation, the best way to address this is to find 3 quotes.
For each?
Oh, of course. To find 3 quotes and go that route.
Okay.
And figure out which one you want the best, which is not always the least expensive, but simply the best, according to Honorable Jason Deloach. Correct?
Yes.
There you go. So
Okay.
that would be my suggestion.
So sunshade, 3 quotes. Fancy seating arrangement, play thing from a vendor, 3 quotes. Whatever all those things are, we can go through each one
I mean,
at a work session.
Or could
I
we-
mean,
and then the other
Could we
option is
bundle
to write them a check and let them make sure that they give you the invoicing so that you can see what was purchased.
Which we need to just clarify. Did they kill it? I'm sorry, make sure I understand. Did they give you an amount that they can't go over?
They did. It was it 15,000?
I thought it was 20, but let's say 15.
It was between 15 and 20,000. Above that, they are not able to self-manage.
And we're looking at giving more.
No.
Then that remind me, what are our amounts?
Was it less than
I will
that?
tell you in a second.
You want me to pull it up?
If you have that last slide, yeah, the last
Is
slide
it-
from
is
last
it
meeting.
From last meeting? I have to find it. Give me a second.
And we can reach out to them just to double check on what that amount was. But I know that he said that Mount
I
Rainier
can
was
hold it up for everyone to see.
considering, Mount Rainier was considering,
So the blended would have been 10 for Thomas Stone and 7 for Mount Rainier.
I have it here, sir. I'm
Ah,
going
you're
to
the
pull it
best.
up, and if Mr. Carl can share my screen, I would sincerely appreciate it. I realize he's busy.
but they were, Mount Rainier Elementary, I'm sorry, not Mount Rainier,
Mount Rainier Council, Mayor
Thomas
Council.
Stone was saying that they were considering funneling the funds from Mount Rainier through the county, because then the county is responsible for
Got you.
all of the back office, the reporting, and all of that stuff. Just because they don't feel like they have adequate staff to do
Okay.
that. And then I think there may also be a little trepidation about what the actual reporting process looks like. Which is, I think, why the vice mayor was saying maybe we could just make the purchases for them,
Sure.
because it eliminates having to deal with the county. It cuts all of that time that you would spend waiting, and once the purchases are made, the reporting is pretty easy.
And that is more, I think, the concern of the school than ours, you know, as far as from like a reporting standpoint, you know, because everything, because you know, we're taking the standard deduction, so everything is going to be under the umbrella of general government services. And I spoke with Shelley a little bit about this after we learned what we learned at Thomas Stone, and she said, you know, we're good to go. So I think it's more like Thomas Stone's concern. But if our amounts are smaller, which they are obviously than Mount Rainier's, 10,000 and 7,000, I don't think we'd even trouble them any if we were to cut them a check, let's say. But there's part of me that likes the idea of them having a specific wish list and us making Christmas happen in
Right.
September, because that way we know that the money is being used exactly the way.
And they're getting exactly what they wanted.
Exactly. And they're getting it faster.
Yeah.
It's just win-win-win.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards that. I think it makes the most sense. And then it doesn't burden. They're going to want to, if I know the other PTO, they're going to want to do the same thing as Mount Rainier, which is not take on too much of that responsibility, because it is a lot on top of their other duties that a parent with the full-time job that they're already doing.
One thing
Tim.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, that's it. So I think if we can just get that list back, I think that'll help me out with the next step.
One thing that I just thought about is, did Mount Rainier make any sort of mention about, once the items are equipped, the assembly, putting the items where they go, are they required to have it inspected for safety once the items are done? And have those costs been factored in to what they gave us? Because Thomas Stone did not mention that at all. And so that may be something we need to address with both schools.
Let's circle back. I thought I remember that there's a process when we were at Mount Rainier's school, that he mentioned the county does come by and do an inspection process afterwards, but that's on them to,
Assemble and all of that stuff.
well, the assembly
It's on
part,
the county.
the county does the inspection part, if I remember correctly, but we can double check. But you can get a vendor to do the installation, that
Okay.
part. But the county has, I think, just their own process for doing the check. And I can't remember if that stops them from being able to use it, or they start using it and then the county comes out at their own timeline to check it. But yeah, I think I agree that we definitely need to double check on that one.
Okay. I'm writing that down as one of the questions to ask when we ask for specifics, specific items that they're requesting.
And I'm trying to remember if there was anything else from Tim's. If it hits me later, if I can think of anything else, I'll chime in and ask Tim to share it with us. But
Okay. Very good. Well, then I think our next steps are to make specific requests to both PTOs to learn about safety inspections and how they're required and how that would affect our timeline. And then thereafter, when we have our specific requests, we can move forward with the RFP process and get our bids and things like that. Does that sound good? Thumbs up?
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Before we move on to the next agenda item, I have to let Mr. Carl know that I've been notified that our YouTube live streaming is not live. So if there's a magic wand that Matt Carl can wave to make it live again, do it. Okay. Our next agenda item is the report out from the meeting with L.A. Perez, and I'm actually going to ask Mr. Gaston to speak about this because I'm tired of hearing my own voice. And he can probably speak about it a lot more intelligently than myself. But as a background, I requested a meeting along with the rest of council with L.A. Perez to make sure that our goals were aligned with their efforts. Mr. Gaston, myself, and Councilmember Monroe were in a hour and 15-minute meeting with L.A. Perez a couple weeks ago, and it was a productive meeting. And I'll let Mr. Gaston explain some of what we discussed and some of the responsibilities that were outlined. Thank you, Mr. Gaston.
Thank you. So we met with L.A. Perez, our consulting team, and in essence, we devised a priority list of items that the town should be focusing their grant opportunities on. Capital improvements. This is the town hall renovation. The town has received two different grants from Legacy Grant, and then I have submitted a third application for the next year's grant process. We've also secured funding from the Maryland Infrastructure Financing Program, so that's ongoing. Long term would be to have the old town hall, police station, and community center renovated. So those are long-term goals. The short-term goal is, of course, a new town hall renovation. By the way, that has started. They started doing work today. I don't know if anybody noticed.
Saw that.
So the new town hall is currently under construction. Bartlett Park, we really need to upgrade the restroom, and we need to deal with the soccer field. It floods every time it rains, and so there's a process with that. Infrastructure, sidewalks, of course, storm runoff. Additionally, electric vehicles. The town is looking to secure some EV vehicles. Then further along, it's housing, real estate. So the town has some vacant properties that we would try to acquire and then do some upgrades or a variety of different options. One is parking. The other one is satellite police department, senior housing. There was also discussion about domestic violence program, and of course our bus shelters. Some of them need to be updated. And that is a quick synopsis of the grant and legislative priorities for the town of Brentwood. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, that's a great summary. And I
Great.
think it's just a couple things I'll add to it. you know, we talked a little bit, okay, one of the great things that came out of this is, as you can see, Mr. Gaston outlined sort of the responsibilities and next steps for LA Perez, you know, what they're going to be doing, who they're going to be talking to. They also expressed to us that this was great. They sort of realigned their goals based on our conversation. So that was, I think it was helpful for everyone. But one thing that I thought was, two things that I thought were important to highlight. One was talking about housing and real estate. You know, we had talked about like acquiring properties and, you know, finding like ways to sort of build our own town through our own money. And one of the things they said is that, you know, there is no fund out there that's just like that is money available for us to purchase properties. And they really encouraged us as council members and community members to, you know, build relationships, they said, with the banks, with property owners, with developers, so that when opportunities for purchasing property were around, we would know about it before somebody else who had a quicker checkbook than us. You know, I think they just really stressed that it's in those sort, as far as like acquiring property, it's more about building relationships at this point than it is about having deep pockets. And then the second thing that I thought was a little, for me, eye-opening was that they said, you know, for a lot of the infrastructure funds, because, you know, Biden passed this huge infrastructure bill, right? So all this money is eventually going to be trickling down. They said that what we really need, and to Councilmember Monroe's credit, he already was ahead of the game. He says that what we really need is a climate resilience plan. We need sort of a vision for developing the town, not in a patchwork fashion, as in like, oh, it'd be nice to have some rain gardens over here or a couple, but like a comprehensive plan for what we're going to do with the town infrastructure-wise for the next 20 years. And you remember, like ARPA, we had put aside $20,000 for a climate consultant to create this plan. They suggested, and one of the person, it might have been Deborah Martinez, they suggested that they recommended that they would reach out to the Army Corps of Engineers to do an environmental study, sort of the same thing as a climate consultant, but it's free. So we'll see what happens from that, but I just thought that was interesting because, you know, there's these funds coming down, but only towns that are sort of prepared to have a specific ask,
Yeah.
kind of like we're asking for Thomas Stone to do, will receive those funds. If we're just like, give us the money, that's not going to happen. So they're like, you need to get your plan in place. So that's probably something that we want to keep on our radar and have completed, I'd say, maybe in a year's time.
You said
You know?
climate resiliency, is that what you said?
Yeah, so it's different titles for it. Climate change has been a big topic in general, and so the federal government is using that as a key word. But a lot of it really boils down to, for example, the levee project that the Army Corps did previously, and then now the state level is improving, right? They just finished that project, is an example of like climate change planning. So while that's good as a step, we also don't have an overall plan in place to talk about the water that comes up from underneath the ground, right? So you saw a lot of that flooding impact almost 2 years ago now with that storm that came through. And you could also look at it as a chance to look at your greenscape, and that ties into your plan as well. So if you want to create larger tree boxes, or if you want to start to look at changing some of the roadways, and so that way the way water is running or pooling in some areas, like perfect example in front of Thomas Stone, the water just pools there and it doesn't reach the drains. But if you don't have a comprehensive look on it, it's kind of hard to tell somebody that this is what I would use the money for. So a lot of different names, but basically it's a way for you to plan for infrastructure spending in a way that's both sustainable and also responsive to climate change. So for example, our neighbor, and proactive, and Mount Rainier is probably the best example of our neighbors that are currently doing it, right? Because they engaged a consultant, I'm gonna say within the last 2 years, and then now they're sort of poised to go after, they've been going after funds and continuing now to go after funds as well, now at the federal level, because they do have that plan that they had already been working on, which I think they call theirs a climate readiness assessment or something along that lines. But I think College Park did the same thing. So there's neighbors along Route 1 corridor, along the Anacostia watershed that we can look to for examples of doing this. So I definitely like free first, and depends on what UMD comes back with, or she mentioned there it is, the UMD School of Engineering, and as well as the Army Corps of Engineers. So there's different options that L.A. Perez talked about. So let me know if that was helpful.
And the only last thing I'll add, unless Councilmember Monroe or Mr. Gaston would like to add one more thing, is that we agreed to do these meetings quarterly. You know, Mr. Gaston will of course still get his monthly update. He'll include that with his TA report. But these in-person or Zoom meetings between myself, Councilmember Monroe, and Mr. Gaston will happen quarterly, which I think will be good because it'll keep everybody on track. And
Yeah.
One last thing I wanted to add is that Ms. Martinez indicated that while grants are great, the ratio or percentage of winning them is 1 in 10. So for every 10 grants that you complete, the viability of you receiving one is 1 in 10. So I thought that was pretty important. A lot of people, hey, grants, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to receive them.
right,
So she was very adamant about that.
absolutely. And of course, you know, as we move forward and you have some time to digest the legislative priorities and so forth, if something comes up and you'd like to amend them or add to them or whatever, let's talk about it and we'll get it added to the next quarterly meeting with L.A. Perez. So,
Will they be at the retreat this weekend?
I don't think so.
The agenda is still being developed, and
Okay.
depending on how the agenda is set up, we
Okay.
can make that determination. Attorney Deloach will definitely be there, and we are having 1 or 2 other guest speakers, but we can definitely have L.A. Perez there. However, the summary that we just did was probably, in essence, what they were
Okay.
going to talk about. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
It certainly does.
All right. Thank you very much.
So moving right along, we'll go to agenda item number 5, which is the new town center change order. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review it. The reason why we're discussing it is because, as Mr. Gaston said in his email, that the change order has to be approved by council. We won't be voting on it today, but we'll be discussing it. And I think Mr. Gaston has some documents. That's great.
So as we recall, the town center, which has been on the docket since 2008, is that correct? The renovation has been on for
Yeah.
2008. So as I stated today, the milestone is on the ground doing the demo as of today. And I am so excited about that, I could absolutely scream. With that being said, there has almost a year to the day. But with that being said, there were some changes that the milestone and the town of Brentwood agreed to do. This was in an effort to reduce cost. One of the major items was, if everybody recalls, the police station was supposed to be in the new building. Unfortunately, a new police station has a lot of higher costs versus just a town center. So we have decided to leave the police station here in the old town center and look to get grants and things of that nature to possibly renovate this building and then upgrade the police department once that happens. But one thing at a time. In essence, your council chamber will be on the first floor. Mr. Carl, can you share the screen for me, please? So the new council chamber will be on the first floor. The police department was going to be on the first floor on the right side of the building, but now those will be, I won't say empty, but office spaces. And the majority of the town of Brentwood administration will be moved upstairs. This was in an effort in consultation with Milestone along with the architect. Because of the change, a lot of HVAC and air conditioning, things of that nature, which were going to be on the second floor, are now on the first floor, which makes transport, repair, and things of that nature much more viable and a lower cost. However, the change order that was submitted by Milestone recently, because of COVID, supply chain, and things of that nature, there's a $350,000 increase because since these plans were implemented the cost has gone up. The good news is that, as I stated, we've done two consecutive legacy grant payments. And if we get another one this fall, that may almost cover the cost of the increase. And I don't have anything else to say. If anybody wants any questions or comments, let me pull up the second level. Let's see.
May I ask a question while you're looking for that?
You
Mr.
most
Gass?
certainly can.
The previous funds that we got for community legacy,
Mhm.
were those funds encumbered? Are we sort of just holding on to them?
So upon my hiring from previously, the legacy grant year one, the application actually was not completed.
Okay.
It was started, but it was not completed, nor were any of the reports done. With that being said, December 31st, 2021, those funds had to be spent. Luckily for us, we were able to buy an elevator, and we did that. So those funds have been purchased already. We are going to receive an additional $270,000, which the treasurer has already put into the building. And then, as I stated, we should probably receive another grant. I don't know the amount. It'll be this fall. The application has been submitted. The funds, the amount will be relayed to us probably in October or November this year.
So currently we have 270,000
Yes, ma'am.
from last year, or from this year,
From this year, yes, ma'am.
and we're waiting for notification of funds for next year.
Correct. Now, keep in mind, we already have the Maryland infrastructure loan to
Yes.
pay for the building. So this is funds on top of funds, if you will.
Okay. all
Okay?
right, all
So,
right.
like I said, and if you look at this diagram, and it's a little small, but as I stated, the majority of all the administrative offices, town administrator, code enforcement, treasurer, you name it, they're all on town clerk. They're all on the second floor. Okay? And then, as I stated, the council chamber will be on the first floor. And then there will be empty offices for community to be used. So if they wanted to host a meeting, or if one of the council members wanted to have a meeting one-on-one with a resident, things of that nature, that area would be used for that. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else have any questions on our illustrious magnanimous?
Can you speak a little bit to sort of how move-in ready the space will be upon completion?
The ETA for the new town center is July 31st of 2023. Milestone anticipates them to be completed, if not sooner. The building will be ready to go, except for furniture.
So there wouldn't be the sort of situation where we've discussed in the past where you might have empty rooms that have concrete floors and no electricity.
So initially, the thought was to build out on the first floor and leave the second floor empty, with the anticipation of securing some other funding to build out. This town council decided that would be a waste of time and effort, and so that's why we secured the Maryland Capital Improvement Financing Program along with grants to go ahead and just build the building outright and be done with it. So come July 2023, if not sooner, the building will be complete except for furniture and things of that nature. So it'll be ready to go. Anybody have any questions?
Yes. So, one, thank you, because a lot of my questions got answered. Two, I'm super excited that this building's moving forward. I'm smiling behind this mask right now. You guys don't understand. Thank you. Three, in some of the initial estimates when we were trying to take into consideration like costs and the reason why we want to go after extra money was to finish the space. So I'm glad to hear the second floor finishing was relayed and that they responded to it, and that's in the drawings. The only part I want to kind of make sure we have a good sense of internally and track is the furniture layout and then what's getting reused from this office, or are we buying brand new chamber furniture, et cetera, like that, because that price tag I don't want to be a surprise. Usually about 6 to 8 months out, you can order furniture and still be okay.
This is very true. We're not at that stage yet. My strongest suggestion, of course, would be to get a new council chamber. Council chamber should be sacred, and it should be brand new. So that will be an expense. In regards to the other furniture, I don't see why we, for the time being, could utilize the furniture from this building over to the new building for the time being, And then as we've discussed, the police department would then disperse throughout the rest of this building. And in essence, everybody have their own office instead of the bullpen situation that we have with our patrol officers. Does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah,
Okay.
we have time. And
No,
so
we do.
It's,
We have time.
it's something we can
Time.
figure as
We
we
have
get
time.
closer.
Like I said, the current situation is
Right.
that we have desks, we have chairs that can move over. Will it be brand new? No. If there's some funding available, maybe we can locate that. But as of right now, we don't anticipate purchasing anything else, so to speak, except for fixtures and things of that nature.
Right.
I did want to discuss one thing that we talked about on the call. We talked about rain gardens and roofs and things of that nature. Milestone and our architect, those items cost more than just a regular building. So, you remember we discussed that? And
Yeah.
they strongly, Chris, don't
Just a-
agree. That's just not a good. A couple of reasons. The way the facility or the building is laid out right now. So, as you know, it's got the fire station, then the concrete pad. In
Yep.
order for them to do something like that, they would have to tear it up. And they didn't just didn't think that was a good idea, especially since we're already on a shoestring budget to begin with.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
It does. And then the last question, make sure I understand this too, is so the police department, do they also need something for this building then to get, remind me if this came up during our LA Perez talk, but this building is sufficient for the police just to stay in, or do we need to do anything that we need to
No, the long-term goal
grants or anything
is
to fix up this building for them?
So I'll give you a quick example. The long-term goal would be card access. So we would
Yes.
have like an electronic card access for staff to utilize instead of using a key.
Okay.
Both buildings would have the same system. We would have to do some minor tweaks and upgrades to this building in order for that to happen. And that funding is being factored in as we move forward. Because if we get an electronic access system for the other building, we would want the same access for this building. So there will be some minor tweaks and upgrades. Nothing major, but we would have to do some minor tweaks and upgrades. One of the main things that we're definitely thinking about doing is our public restrooms would also be on the system. So then that way it can electronically open and close as opposed to actually having someone to physically open and close the restrooms, which is very, very important.
Just
Right.
to use where I-
Correct.
So our building automatically
Right.
opens and shuts.
It opens and
Oh,
shuts.
good. Nice.
We physically have to turn the key and lock it.
Hmm.
And we have already dedicated some ARPA funds for that electronic key system.
Mm-hmm.
I think long-term, this building will need a lot of renovations to house the police in the way that we want to house them, in a way that attracts quality recruits.
Correct.
All that kind of stuff, helps with retention, all that kind of thing,
But the good news is that this area,
long-term.
per
Yeah.
vice mayor, would be somewhat of a community area so that we would actually be able to house some events and things of that nature. Does that make sense?
And the reason why I also kind of partially asked was, and again, we have time to figure this out, is Matt, also you and Matt, I will call the AV department discussion internally,
Mm-hmm.
how that room then goes over to that space, or does that just, the room, that AV room stay over there, or is that part of the,
Yeah, the
plans?
first floor has the AV room. It's off the actual council chambers.
and maybe, I'm sorry, Matt, because it's a little bit late. Maybe something to think about as we're talking about a hybrid option moving forward is how that goes into their thinking. And I just don't know if they've taken that into consideration.
They probably have not, because as I stated, we're still in early stages of build out. And so
Okay.
as we go along, we will make sure that Mr. Carl, along with all of his equipment, hopefully it'll be reduced because he doesn't use a lot of the equipment that he currently has. But we will definitely have an area for him in the next building. But it'll be on the first floor.
Okay.
So it'll be probably very adjacent, it'll be adjacent to the council chambers.
All right. Excellent. And that's just to make sure that all of that is taken in consideration of what they've laid out to us so far, and that it won't be a new surprise down the road that,
No, I mean, as long as we don't
No.
buy a TV station, I think we should be okay, if you
all
will.
right. Appreciate it.
But
So
there's,
we're not buying WTTG, guys. Scratch it off. We're not doing
I was thinking like, drop screen here, and drop screen
I don't think
there,
so.
another drop
I
screen
think a
off
lot
to
of the
side.
equipment that's here will just,
how is it?
So nice.
a lot of the equipment will just transfer over, and then what we need to do is do a strategic plan on what the AV room is gonna look like and which room we're gonna utilize.
Okay.
And of course, Mr. Carl will be involved in that process.
Appreciate it. Thank
No
you.
worries. Any other questions? Councilmember Goff? Vice Mayor Leggett? Councilmember Taylor?
None.
Town Clerk?
I would just
Attorney
remind,
Deloach? Okay.
I'd like to remind council that we will be voting on this next meeting, so take the time to look through it,
Review.
review, look at
Please
the
do.
numbers.
Our town treasurer has some questions regarding the staffing and cost. So once that, the summary has been created, we will then go to Milestone and raise our concerns. So please, review the budget, the increase in costs, and let me know if you have any concerns.
Okay.
Anybody, does that answer, are we good?
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you, Mr.
Fantastic.
Gaston.
No worries.
Moving right along, we're at our last item, which is permits and code, which is a vague sort of category. But I asked that we brought this to council because we have a permit request at 4306 40th Street. Mr. Gaston, I believe there's a slide for this as well.
I have the actual application for building permit.
Awesome.
Is there something
Let's
else?
start there.
Let's start
So
there?
there's an application for a building permit. If you don't mind,
Okay.
Scroll.
Mr. Carl, if you could be so kind. We can not show that. You talking about this right here? There you go. Is that good?
that's great. So I'm not sure. I apologize for being a little late on this. Let me open it up here and just read through it a little bit while we,
Oh, I can read through it.
can you read through it? Okay, can you just,
Mayor and Town Council,
Thank you.
application hereby permit to building of rear of property, 4306 40th Street, Brentwood, Block 26, Lot 21. Telephone numbers, I don't think I want to have that information out there. Contractor, Sunnyside Avenue. I don't have a name. Is there a name?
4306 Brentwood LLC.
Oh, okay, 40, there you go. I thought that was the address. And that's it. Then they've paid, and then that's that. And then I can show you the actual plans itself. Let me pull those up, because I do have them. Here it is. Mr. Carl, if you'd be so kind. So this is the home as it currently sits. Right?
correct, so like the slide that's up right there is the current home.
Correct.
I do want to, so what is sort of, let me preface this a little bit more by saying the permit is for an addition that is 30 feet high, so 2 stories, 25 feet wide, and 53 feet deep. So it's a pretty big addition. Yeah, it almost doubles the size of the house. I want to say the house itself, I think, is 1,300 square feet if I looked at the real estate records correctly. But it's a big addition. What the picture shows is the current driveway. Well, sort of. On the left-hand side is the driveway of the neighbors. That's where, Mr. Gaston, do you mind scrolling back up to the top?
Oh,
So on the left-hand side of that picture is the truck of the neighbor's driveway. And so the former residents didn't actually have a driveway. They had some gravel that they had poured down. You can see the grass has grown over, and it would hold 2 vehicles. And so whenever there's new development, my concern has always been, how does this impact the community at large? And parking has always been the biggest concern of our residents. We know that that's been the concern for years. So when I see a house doubling in size, I think, well, we're going to need more parking. And so we made a request of the permit applicants to build a driveway, A, and B, build a driveway that could accommodate 3 cars. This was a request that we put through code. Code spoke with the property owners and came back and told us that that was not a workable option for the property owners, to which I said, well, let's talk about this in an open meeting with council. That's why we're here today. And so for me, that's not acceptable. To have a homeowner say that they can't build a driveway and they're not going to put in an additional spot. I'm not even going to go over the reasons because they're not of concern, but I will mention that on that first picture that we're looking here to the left, where that truck is parked, that's the neighbor's driveway. That's a 3-car driveway. If you look sort of in the left-hand side of that picture, you'll see there's a garage behind a fence, which is behind the truck. And so what essentially that driveway does is extend beyond the fence to the garage to accommodate 4 if you include the garage, but 3 cars. Mr. Gaston, if you scroll down to the next picture, this is the other side of the same property. This is the other neighbor's driveway. You again see a fence at the end of the driveway. And although I can't go on through to the property to inspect it, you'll have to take my word, there's a gravel extension beyond that fence for a 3rd vehicle. So the reason why I bring this up is that it's not an unreasonable request on our behalf for the property owners to build a 3-car driveway. And so I'm glad Attorney Deloach is here because I'd like to talk about ways that we can encourage the property owners to build a driveway. And what you guys think about the situation at all. So. And I'll have a chocolate-covered almond while you consider.
By the way, the homeowners are here, correct? Would you like them to speak now, or you want them
Let's
to?
wait till public comments.
Sounds good.
So, I guess my question is, there's already a gravel driveway there. Would we be satisfied with it extending back to the fence line?
The fence line would accommodate 2 cars. And in my estimation, a house
then
that
they would need
size
to widen
needs
it?
parking, just needs to lengthen it.
Yeah, I mean, going straight back to where the fence on the rear is. You're asking that it go back that far?
So in the picture that Mr. Gaston has up there, there's that fence that you can see
Yeah.
beside the house. A driveway in front of that fence would accommodate 2 cars. So a driveway for 3 would extend beyond that fence into the backyard, essentially. Which is
So
the
that
same thing the
fence-
neighbor has on the left side.
So that fence is what separates the front area from the rear?
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
that's where I was confused.
Yeah.
So we're asking that the fence come down and that the driveway extend beyond that?
Correct. And what I see that the neighbors doing is that they've created gates on their fence, so that a car can go in and out.
And is the request that it be a paved driveway? So that it's sort of a permanently established driveway?
That would be my preferred driveway, yes.
Okay.
Either one requires a permit from the county, whether it be gravel or paved. We don't require permits in Brentwood for driveways, but the county does.
The county does.
So, either one. But what I like about a permanent driveway is that it's permanent parking. There's that addition is not going anywhere. But the parking, there's the possibility that it'll grow over, as we see right there. So what I like about a permanent, about the concrete is that it's permanent, just like the house is permanent.
If I may? My suggestion would be permeable pavers as far as environment, things of that nature, right?
That
This
would
is-
be ideal.
Can we suggest, or do we have to make the driveway in that manner?
That's what I wanted to consult with Attorney Deloach on. If an agreement could be drawn up, in which, we agree to the permit with, adequate parking, would that be something that we could investigate? But that's really that's out of my purview.
Really quick, did I miss something, and does a house that size require that kind of parking?
There's no requirement on the books for any parking in Brentwood. You can build a house with no parking. But we know that parking is probably the #1 concern. And I think we have been charged as council members to look out for the needs of our community and residents at large. And so that is like #1 for a lot of people is parking. So I would make the same request of somebody if they were building a new house. That is, I request that you create parking for the people who live there.
Off-street parking,
Off-street parking, exactly.
let's be clear.
So, and the only thing I would say, that's with 2 points. One, I remember there being a clarification on the use. Is it that it's being rented out?
No,
Or-
it's not.
So it is just
It's just
residents.
Yes.
So that, thanks for that clarification. And then two, the thing I would say, generally what the county's gonna say, depending on how much of the percentage of the lot is taken up by permanent or permeable, is how much green space is being taken away from the lot. Not for us to answer here, but that is a consideration, because they will only approve, or they will give you an exception if too much of the lot is now being turned over to concrete versus it being something permeable, which is, to Mr. Gaston's point, permeable is going to be
Environmentally healthy.
healthy. So in this situation, I definitely would want to try and have folks explore permeable if they can, especially if a driver is going to be taking that much of the lot up. But I understand these things are costs, and I'm not sure if there's any rebates going on right now, et cetera. But I do agree. I think parking is going to be a strong concern. With that being that large, whether it's a permanent, single-family house or primary residence or not, that structure's getting pretty big, and parking is a premium right now, and that does have an impact. So, we may hear more back in the comment portion here, but that's my first question too, is just, can we find a way for parking to, be extended on site? Because it does seem feasible in the lot.
The neighbors are doing it on both sides. They have parking for 3 on both sides, so it's not an unreasonable request. And our job, like I say, is to protect the interest of our community. That's what we're doing. So that's why I wanted to bring that up. This request, I think, was put in probably a week and a half ago. It's been a while.
When did you guys submit this? Oh, wait, it's right here. It's on.
Yeah.
Give me a second, I can pull it up. It was submitted on. So you went to Prince George's County on March 28th and got it paid. As far as we're concerned,
623.
yeah, June 23rd.
So it's a recent request, But of course, the longer anybody's sitting on their investment without getting a return, the more it's costing them. So I'm sure an expeditious settlement will be in everyone's best interest. But I wanted to bring it to council so we could discuss and so forth. And then I'm glad that the property owners are here. I think the best thing to do, since we are close to the public comment time, is to allow them 5 minutes to sort of explain their situation, 3 minutes for Q&A, and then I think discussion between council members would probably best be reserved for the next meeting.
Correct.
And so the only sort of back and forth will be in this direction. And then if we need to, we'll put it on the agenda for next meeting. So
Sounds good.
seems like a natural transition to the property owners. Please give us 1 second for Councilmember Taylor to return. And just for the record, if you don't mind just stating your names, and then we are all ears.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you so much, Walt, for your time. This morning, yes, my name is Alvaro Rodriguez. This morning, I come by and spoke with Ms. Marta Aguilar. And she was explaining, talking to me about her concerns. Now, the house, as I explained her today, and I went with her with the drawings to show her. The house will be 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths with an office. The addition that we are doing on the rear is just, we're gonna put a kitchen back there. And the addition, the purpose on the second level, that's the master bedroom with a nice big, master bath, walk-in closet, all that kind of stuff. Now, again, having the house of 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, our idea is to do the driveway, as you guys see in the picture right now, is to do a two-car driveway for 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths. I think is good. Now I was talking to some of the neighbors too, because I can see you're worried about the parking. But even then, they told me is that they use our space because they know that nobody lives there. But once we move there, they don't have no problems, to go and park in their places, in their houses. Now again, this is a 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, two-car driveway. I think that's reasonable. It's a single-family house. It's not a multi-family. It's not like there will be a lot of people, just for a single-family house. And again, it's for us, as you guys, as I can hear, all the expenses and everything is going up on the construction part. So for us to, adding one more, extending the driveway more, it will increase more money for us too. So that's where we at right now.
All right.
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions?
No?
You asked him to give his name and address, right?
I think he said that.
Yeah, I said my name. Yeah.
Did you say your address?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't ask for address. That's my fault. So, yeah.
It's all right, I got
Yeah.
it.
We're doing public comment.
It's
Yeah.
40th
Can you state
Street.
your address as well? My apologies.
4306 40th Street, Brentwood, Maryland.
Does anybody have any questions?
I don't have a question as much as I have a comment. Thank you for coming, first of all. I appreciate and respect that you're wanting to purchase this home here. Thank you for that, and expand on that home to make it more of what you would like it to be. And I think our concern about parking is more so that if you decide to sell that home in 2 years, anything could happen there. And so a family with 7 cars could move in. Because families are living multi-generationally, we have homes where they may have 5 cars in the house. And on-street parking is really an issue. So I don't want you to think that it's that we don't trust you or that we don't think that you're presenting your case honestly, as much as we're sort of trying to protect residents in the long run to make sure that their interests are being met as far as parking, because it is a huge problem in town. So I would like to say that to you. To the council, I would just say that I hope we're able to be sympathetic. I can appreciate that extending the driveway or having to pave it is a huge expense that we're sort of asking them to take on, and that we're able to really work to meet somewhere in the middle so that both sides are able to feel comfortable with whatever the outcome is.
So, and actually, thank you for coming. Can someone actually, Mr. Gaston, can you clarify code enforcement's overall concerns that were conveyed to the owner? Can we just make sure I get a quick synopsis of what code's concerns were?
One of the biggest concerns is that the house is being doubled in size.
Mm-hmm.
And as Councilmember Taylor has stated, that multi-generational people are now living cohabitating. With that, I cannot tell you how many cars you can have at your house. I just can't do that. So if you purchased a home, technically you can have as many cars there as you feasibly can. And with that being said, code was concerned that the house was being doubled in size and only 2 parking spaces were being allotted for, where both neighbors' driveways are extended 4 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
So it would almost be a matching situation. So the driveway on the left side, driveway on the right side, would go back, and then that's where the parking would be. Because of the size of the home, it's doubling in size. And as Councilmember stated, if they have to move or something happens, it then goes on the open market and anything can happen to the property. And as I stated, I can't tell you, you can't buy that home and not have 4 cars in there. That's not something we can do. We prefer you don't do it, but it's just not something we can do. Does that answer your question? That was Code's concern, that was my concern. We have, and do you want me to go down this rabbit hole?
About what?
The ADUs?
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you for asking.
But like I said, multi-generational situations can create issues.
Sure. So, one way and then we being the building industry, like working in architecture, right? There was always either setbacks or there's parking minimums that you have to deal with. So residential has no parking minimums in this situation. So the best thing I can think of, which maybe we can't solve right away, is to look at comparable size houses and then see how much parking they have in town.
Correct. Right. And their
the-
2 neighbors on both sides, their driveways extend for 3 cars. So
Right.
it's a match.
And then my next step after that is if I can find comparable size houses, it does feel like a fair request. So at least that's where I'm currently at. So I think I do need more time to think about it. But if we find similar properties and they're able to accommodate that size, I think it's, fair.
Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Sorry to interrupt. Something that I would like to add is the picture, the one you show on the neighbor on the left side, the picture doesn't show that they have an AC unit, so they only have for 2-car parking. They have an AC unit on the front, and what it looked like at one point maybe was some kind of garage is just an storage, because I spoke with the neighbor, I went to his yard, take a look, but yeah, definitely it's just one big AC unit, and there's no way that you can fit 3 cars there. It's only for 2 cars. And also too, it will be good to clarify that the finished square feet of the house is gonna be only 2,100 square feet. It's not, we are talking like a 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 square feet house. So for like a 2,100 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, 2 cars on the driveway, plus on the street. And I know, we don't own the street, but according to the neighbors, they say, once you guys move in here, yes, we won't park here because we understand at the same way that we would like for somebody to park on the front of our houses too. So again, it's 2,100 square feet house, 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, 2-car parking space. I think is reasonable. It's not like we are asking for too much based on the square footage of the house too.
No, thank you. That's helpful too, the overall square footage. So I know for me, I need to walk away and think more about comparable size houses in general and take some time to walk around the neighborhood and just reassess my thinking on parking in driveways, to be honest. So at least that's where I'm at personally.
Also too, there's new constructions that were recently done on the last maybe 2-3 years by a developer that does a lot of places here in the area, where I see that their parking is only for 1 car. It's on 4th Street. If you go 1 block down, there's 3 brand new houses. It's only for a driver for 1 car, and the square footage of those properties are much bigger than the one we are planning to do.
If I may? Do you mind?
Please.
So you're correct. The town did not foresee the situation that you speak of. What we're trying to do is to plan for the future so something like that doesn't occur because of the limited amount of parking that we do have. So I understand what you're saying. You're saying we have new housing, they only have 1 parking car. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with code, you have to think a little foresight. And if you have the ability to put the 3 parking spaces there moving forward, that's what we would like. I shouldn't say we.
No,
but
I
that
would
would
agree.
be what the
Yeah.
town, and that's from a planning perspective. It's strictly a planning perspective.
Our town is becoming more dense, and so we need to make additional considerations for how it is developed. And maybe in years past, those considerations weren't necessary, but we are not going to follow in the footsteps of those before us and make mistakes that burn us down the road. And so you are at that wonderful crossroads where we're beginning to sort of see this situation and how it was created, the situation where parking is very difficult in town. And I understand you've spoken to some of the neighbors, but we've spoken to all of our residents, and it's been a concern for years. And so we're at a place where we need to start being much more calibrated and considerate in how new development goes forward in this town.
No, I understand. Also, but something to keep in mind is that the permit was approved by the county too, based on the restriction that the county has limitations and all that. So it's not like I'm just trying to do something by right, you know. It's something that the county first approved, and then I come because I come earlier to the city to try to ask some questions. And unfortunately, with the person that I spoke, they were not very helpful. And kind of I'm not saying a rude way, but they told me, first you get your permit from the county, and then you talk to us. That person didn't want to give me much answers after that. So based on that, you know, to me was, you know, get my permit from the county, then work with the city. That's what I did.
That's perfect, and that's where we are. Now we're in that point where we need to discuss.
May I? Yeah. So you're correct. The county's rules are a lot more lax than town's rules.
Yeah.
And they do that for a reason, so that they're more strategic in their planning and what the town is going to look like. So if you, and I hate to go down this road, but if you're in unincorporated Prince George's County, there are areas where the home is 4,000 square feet. But in towns like Calmer Manor, Cottage City, Brentwood, North Brentwood, consistency is the key. Parking is limited, and the council, from a code perspective, has to look at the larger vision. And yes, you could be there for 20 years, but you could also be there for 2 months. Somebody else moves in, and they don't have parking to accommodate a, was it 21 square foot home?
2,100 square feet.
Exactly. That they don't, because I can't, as a town, tell you how many cars you can have. But if I can give you the option of 3, then that's at least 3 off the street.
But also too, as you can see, the new trend too is a lot of people is not like are buying. It's not like older generations that having bunch of cars. It's more people that are biking, more people that are using the metro, buses, all that kind of stuff. So it's something to keep in mind too.
No, we definitely keep in mind, and we would welcome that, but we cannot foresee that. We can't think that someone's going to move in and they've got bikes, electric scooters, and things of that nature. I have to anticipate 4 to 5 cars per home. Hopefully it doesn't work out that way, but that is how the vision is thought, if that makes any sense.
I don't see how you guys will ask somebody to have a driver for 4 or 5 cars in for a house that it will be only 2,100 square feet.
We're only asking for a driveway for 3 cars.
He just mentioned 4
No,
cars.
so the house, the residents could have up to. If I've got 3 of those cars off the street, then 2 are on the street. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'm going to give the property owner 1 minute to sort of have closing remarks. And then I will give council 2 minutes for any follow-up questions, and then we will wrap this up at 8:51. So your final remarks before we go.
Well, my final remarks will be, I went, just to take my permits from the county, it took me 6 months. It went there a lot of back and forth. I thought that I was doing everything, you know, that the county required. So I'm trying to do everything by right now. When I spoke last week and a half with the mayor named Rocio Tremino, I showed her what I was doing. She was excited about that. She said, "Good, because that will be good for the community." And she told me, you know, I was under the impression. She told me, "No, this is as long as you know you provide the paperwork that you need, you pay the fee, which was 50% of whatever we pay the county." She said, you know, then we will get our permit. We did all that, but you know, I'm trying to get in touch with. I've been talking to Martha, and she said that the delay is because of the driveway. So I hope you understand. I'm trying to start my project, but at the same time, I think that it's like they don't allow me to start the project. So I hope you can understand my position too. I'm just a regular person. I don't think I'm not asking for something out of reach. I'm not asking for something break the rules for me, something special. It's just for, again, it's 2,100 square feet house, two-car garage, two-car driveway, plus you can park on the street too for 2 cars if they want. So it's something, I hope you gentlemen can understand my point of view.
30 seconds, please.
So, well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you thank you for letting me speak, number one. That's all.
Council, any follow-up questions?
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And so this question isn't
Follow-up
for,
question
it is,
for the property owner?
it's for the town administrator actually for this discussion. So let me know if that's allowed.
Can we save that for the next meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. I like to
So,
wrap this up.
thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sorry, but when you say take to the next meeting, so that way I won't get my permit, I cannot start my work until you guys get your next meeting, or how that will work?
We will address our concerns to the code enforcement officer, and she will communicate directly with you.
Okay.
The timeline for that, I cannot guarantee, but it will be at the latest 2 weeks, but hopefully sooner.
So I cannot start my work?
Your permit is not approved.
Okay. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay. That was the last thing. And so where we go next is upcoming events, and I always forget whether this is Councilmember
Thank you.
Taylor. Thank you,
Have a good
guys. Or whether it's Mr. Gaston's role to read the upcoming events.
Saturday, July 9th, 2022, the council will hold a retreat to address a number of issues. Eight what?
Time.
No, it's at 9. I apologize. It is at 9 a.m. Tuesday, July 19th, is the gubernatorial elections, the primary. The town hall will be closed for voting. We are encouraging all residents who have the ability to vote in this primary to please come out. The elections will be hosted here, and all the equipment should be delivered within the next couple of weeks. Wednesday, July 20th, to that end,
Time.
Seven
What time?
7 to 7.
7 to 8.
I'm sorry, is it 7 to 8? 7 to
That's
8?
election.
Yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. It's 7 to 8.
Thank you.
7 to 8. The building will have to work. The building should be open at 5, but voting will not begin till at 7 a.m. And then it'll close like the town clerk said at 8. Okay? And anyone that's left in line at 8 will be allowed to vote. Okay? To that end, the regularly scheduled Tuesday meeting was been moved to July 20th at 7 p.m. The Tuesday, July 26th, the Public Works Committee will host their monthly, is that monthly?
Oh, I'm so sorry. We're in recess until August. So
Correct.
no public work committee meeting in
No,
July.
all righty.
My
then.
apologies.
Yes,
I figure if council can recess, so can the public works.
there you go. So you're in recess. And I can't think of anything else. We don't have another holiday until Labor Day. So everything is status quo until Labor Day.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
And we don't have any other events, parades, walks, flags.
August 2nd, I believe, is
National
National
Night
Night
Out.
Out, which will take place here in Bartlett Park at 6 p.m. It's like 6 to 8.
You're right.
6 to 9.
6 to 9. 6 to 9.
That'll be here at Bartlett Park. If you have any questions in reference to, please contact Chief Washington. And
August 2nd is a work session, so are you going to reschedule that or still have it
No,
at the same time?
the month of August has been
Oh, that's right.
recessed.
It's
We're on recess.
We're on recess and for the entire month of
Oh,
August.
I mean, if you want to come in,
Y-
Giselle.
You're more than welcome. We'd love to
do a
have
little
you.
work solo.
I'll be here for National Night Out. Okay.
All right.
Update this calendar.
listen, that is not my particular event. I'm here in support of the homies at the police department. That is not me.
Sounds great. Well, here we are, the best part of the evening. It's when we all turn over to Councilmember Monroe. Looking for a motion to adjourn this meeting, sir?
I make a motion to adjourn this meeting on Tuesday, July 5th at 8:55 PM.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So adjourned.
Good night, Brentwood.
Good night, Brentwood.